While certainly being more exciting than real-life volleyball, at least most of the time, Haikyuu is actually rather downplayed, at least compared to its brethren in the animated sports genre. Typically, a lot of sports anime find a lot of success in turning the volume up to 11 and creating a larger-than-life extravaganza fueled by moments of triumph and cathartic ass-kicking. However, despite the genre staples we have grown accustomed to, Haikyuu does something different. The universe the story takes place in doesn't glorify volleyball. Nobody's gaining Super Saiyan-esque power-ups for the sake of making things more extraordinary than they need to be, and the major climactic payoffs can be something as simple as one player learning how to block a rough smash or succeed with a hard-practiced serve. These are seemingly mundane when stated plainly, but Haikyuu proves itself with how it executes these scenes. The show has some clear selling points, like the way it comes at you like a rush of positivity, or the way it's executing nerve-wracking games of animated volleyball. But I think there is a bit more to it than attitude and fireworks, so let's try looking into that. I think that the key is something as conventional as writing characters that we care about, to the point where we become as passionate as they are for achieving their objectives. It's like this. Say that you're really into a sport, you've spent many hours watching important games both live and on the couch. Now, these games might have taken you on an emotional roller coaster more times than you can count, but nothing of that even comes close to the first time you're watching your own kid play their very first game. Technically, the stakes are higher in the professional games. The event is more expensive and the players certainly have a lot more to lose in the shape of money, job, fame, or pride. The stakes of whatever game your kid is playing simply cannot compete, but that doesn't change the fact that you have never been so anxious before, and that is because that you simply care that much more about your kid than you do your favorite sports team. The writers of Haikyuu realizes this, and they have done a splendid job implementing that psychology into the anime. Finding characters compelling naturally makes us care about whatever they care about. So you could say that they are basically using empathy as a narrative tool. This is why it ultimately doesn't matter whether what's at stake is the entirety or the fate of the universe, or if it's just a game of volleyball. If we care about the characters, we can get wrapped up into it just as much as the characters themselves do. Now, that is not to say that a good conflict should not have stakes, but stakes are not proportioned by the magnitude of the disaster, but by the importance of it in the eyes of the characters. There are so many movies and anime that is all about the destruction of the world, but we are so disconnected from all the noise and the explosions because the characters doesn't seem to care about it, or maybe we just don't care about the characters at all to begin with. Okay, so caring about the characters will make us care about what they care about. Got it. But that doesn't answer why we ended up caring about these characters to begin with, so let's look into that. An obvious point would be the fact that a lot of these characters are just really endearing to watch. Hinata's enthusiasm, Kageyama's smugness, Nishinoya and Tanaka's best bro attitude, it's all very enthralling, but I do realize that it is very subjective which character types I like. I mean, maybe all that you guys are seeing are a bunch of typical high school kids, so let's try to move above that and look at things from a more objective point of view. A lot of times we start caring about characters because they have very clear goals and motivations, or because they are struggling with something, or because we relate to them, or because their personalities reflects in each other and thus creates interesting social situations or funny banter. I think all of the above are pretty easy to place on the cast of Haikyuu, but I still think there is something else going on. I think Haikyuu works because it doesn't rely on any specific character formula. There are many formulas and structures that can help us analyze and critique a work of fiction, and character writing is no different. Are we dealing with a character study or a character arc? Is the story centered on a single lead character, or are we dealing with an ensemble cast? Is the story driven by the characters, the plots, or a mix of the two? A story always has some kind of structure that you can apply to it, and that's not really a bad thing. Problems arise, however, when it becomes obvious that a piece of work was being written with a specific formula in mind, as some kind of recipe. It's like seeing the strings behind the illusion and it breaks the immersion. The second an audience recognizes a formula in a story, it becomes predictable. Again, narrative formula are tools used for analysis, so I'm certain that you could take all the characters of Haikyuu and argue for why they are just unsimplistic character arcs, but I would argue that there is more to them. Of course they want to get better at volleyball, but on top of that they are also dealing with adolescence, introspection, expectations of each other, and expectations of themselves, self-esteem issues, attitude problems, school life, family issues, and uncertainty of the future. They aren't steadily moving towards one specific goal. They are constantly adapting and developing. They have several goals and several motivations. Have you ever heard someone say, wow, that character really changed throughout the story? Well, the characters of Haikyuu doesn't merely change, they grow. Let's exemplify this by looking at one of the supporting characters of the show with a very modest screen time. This one is Yamaguchi. Throughout the series, he is learning to find his place amongst his friends as well as on the volleyball team. He has learned to accept the fact that there are certain things that he simply cannot, but there are other things that only he can do. And he has learned to speak up, both when his friends are in the wrong and when he needs to ask for help. He has faced humiliation but recovered from it with a stronger mentality. Every time he gets switched in for a serve, we see another look in his eyes, reflecting the state of character he is in, because he is constantly changing and constantly growing. What is so damn impressive is how Haikyuu manages to give this meticulous treatment to all of its main cast, while in fact spending the majority of its screen time on playing and or talking about volleyball. By extension, I can't help but mention how tight Haikyuu is with its screen time. Rarely is a character in frame without it being relevant. This is mostly a compliment regarding the show's sense of focus. So far, Haikyuu has had 60 plus episodes, yet all of the characters still feels oddly fresh. That is because the show knows when to focus on which characters. That way everybody gets the time they need to find their place within the narrative. So, as shown, writing and directing are both strong elements when it comes to crafting characters that we care about. But let's not forget that anime is a visual medium, and thus we can ask if there is anything in Haikyuu's visuals that makes us care about the characters even more. Again, we have some obvious pointers, and to be frank, the show does do a lot of different things with its visuals. You've got the simplistic cartoony moments for comedic purposes, the I cannot believe this is not an anime film levels of animation, and there are some visual metaphors here and there too. But I feel we must ask ourselves after watching Haikyuu just what about the show stands out and makes it different. What does Haikyuu do visually that is unique to it? The answer comes in two. First of all, the character designs. I'm not talking about the individual designs of each character, but the style that they are drawn in. They look different. Same face syndrome has become a phenomena within the animated community, and the point here is that Haikyuu's designs basically manage to look very distinct while still looking like, well, anime characters. However, I think the one most important thing when it comes to the visual presentation of Haikyuu's characters are the expressions. Facial expressions in animation is one hell of a challenge. Unlike real faces, which has thousands of different details and lines, anime characters consists of just a few. I've already mentioned the same face syndrome. Well, this you could call the same expression syndrome. Here is Kirito from Sword Art Online being happy. Here he is being sad and angry and annoyed and awkward. It just looks like there has been used templates for each emotion. The thing is, if you ask 100 different people to smile, you don't get 5 different types of smiles. You get 100. Every person looks slightly different when they express an emotion, and Haikyuu has managed to showcase this in their animation. When Haikyuu's characters expresses an emotion, it doesn't feel superficial or like it is drawn off of a template. It feels real, like a real person is emoting something, like the expression is unique to the characters, and that is incredibly endearing. Distinct and believable facial expressions helps selling a character's emotions, like in the first episode where Hinata's entire presentation is building up to this one stare from him that solidifies how strong-minded he actually is and why we should be rooting for him. The expressions of Haikyuu's characters speaks volumes of who they are, and they make us remember them long after the game is over. So to sum up, there are many reasons as to why Haikyuu is a great show, but I think one of the main reasons is that we care about these characters, and that is mostly due to the meticulous character writing and the distinct, unique and expressional character animation. Hey guys, it's Haikyuu. So this video was actually supposed to be a review of the 3rd season of Haikyuu, but the things I had to say about the show in general ended up taking so much space that I decided splitting it up into 2 separate videos would be the best way to go. In other words, I would strongly recommend you go watch my actual review of the 3rd season, which should be uploaded shortly. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, click the bell to get notifications, and I hope that you will have a lovely day. See ya!